Hey, good morning, Dr. Michael Fisher. Just want to do a short video here on a new thinker that I've just come across. I put him in the kind of genre of science, consciousness, history, expertise. He's obviously a pretty young, really bright thinker, and it's rare I can listen to a podcast for very long and I agreed with virtually everything he said, and they're very powerful points, and I'll go over a few of those points. And this is Dr. Alex Gomerez-Marin. I'll put it down in the link below so you can see how to spell it. Look him up if you like, do some more reading. I certainly will. I was just introduced to him just last night. But I'm sitting there listening and thinking, and he's talking about consciousness wars that are going on right now. And of course, he's very concerned, as I am. I'm sure you are, of all the kinds of wars going on that we would call more physical wars. And in a way, he's really talking about a metaphysical wars or wars of the mind. So, consciousness wars, right? This interiority of war, and that the hyper invested capitalism of the worst predatory kind is now working with techno engineers and their culture of their utopia to build a transhumanist world based on machines fundamentally and AI, artificial intelligence at the core of that, and a huge profit for a while, but basically just to redesign human nature and virtually to redesign, bio-re-engineer, right? Cultural based and techno based world of nature itself. And that will all be part of this endless pursuit of some humans who believe they are here to re engineer and remake creation itself. In other words, to play God. You've probably heard of many of the speakers or watched videos, perhaps. And if not, maybe this is new to you. And I'm just going to enter this thinking and walk through four different kinds of wars that include this kind of consciousness mind wars that I have been following and pursuing. So if you're watching my channel, that's why I'm doing this talk is I am someone doing the war front, so to speak. I am one of the sacred warriors of this interiority battle, this battleground for what our minds, what the human mind is meant to be, what the human mind's capable of being. And of course, not just the mind, it's really of evolution and consciousness itself. And of course, some may say I'm a bit of a traditionalist that way. I do believe in evolutionary laws, natural laws that need to be followed. And I'm not a superhuman, you know, interested person in how to be super techno human and post human and transhuman. In other words, making ourselves more and more machines. And yeah, they'll tell you every benefit possible. And I'm not saying there aren't some benefits to creating this hybrid human cyborg machine. But that connected world is very dangerous. I did my dissertation on The Matrix trilogy by the Wachowski brothers, and that sci-fi film tells it all. Yes, I did my dissertation on it for a reason. I wanted to understand the deep interior of the fantasy, and often a real consensual paranoia that exists, if not a near psychosis, to many of these engineer, leader, tech bros now becoming oligarchs in controls and autocrats controlling the entire society as multi-billionaires. But here's the wars that I've watched, and I want you to have a historical consciousness understanding of what's going on now today. So when you listen to Alex Gomerez-Marin, and I share some of his points, you can have a historical perspective, right? That's really important. Once you lose a historical perspective on these wars and this competition for the mind, for humans, for reality, for domination, because it is all about dominating. I can tell you 99.9% of it. It's the race to dominate. Somebody's going to have the idea to dominate this, to create the first immortal human that can be reproduced forever. Fantasies, 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 and a lot of money and a lot of smarts from tech schools and engineering schools, and a lot of futurist wildness at times that's really out of touch with the natural laws of the cosmos. And that to me is pretty much an end game to extinction. Now, I'm not anti-technology. Obviously, I'm using this technology. I'm not anti-cyborg. I think there's a real advantage to certain cyborg practices, human machine combinations that could be really useful to today and are actually essential to adapting. So, no going back to the good old tribal days of living in the forest alone and being primal peoples. We are cyborgs now. And one way or another, we're going to have to incorporate this in all of our thinking. You might want to read the Cyborg Manifesto by Donna Haraway, for example, written in the early 90s. But that's not what I talk. So the consciousness wars is the latest. And let me explain it, and then I'll go back to what are three wars that I also pay attention to them and part of front lines with. And maybe you will be too, as a participant in this war. Again, it's not a war anyone's going to win. So I start with that. And that gets me out of any kind of fear-based structured thinking that somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose, right? The zero-sum game. I'm interested in people winning on both sides, so-called winning. But winning is completely different now in 2025 than it was conceived of, let's say, in the 80s, the 90s, and earlier history of modernity, where maybe there were victories to win. Now it's just a matter of, can we keep ourselves from going extinct, and can we do some good on the planet? Not a lot of winning game there. So people who love to win and gamble, they're the people who are going to be driving the technoculture, digital wars, consciousness wars, and this remaking transhumanism. Consciousness wars is really a big battle about scientists, artists, spiritual people, thinking about, is consciousness a real thing? Is the world made of consciousness? Is all things, do they have their own kind of consciousness, as the Buddha might say? Or others have claimed, but many, many others now are claiming there's no such thing, or consciousness is only an artifact of a material neuro circuit in the brain, right? And consciousness is not really that interesting or important. What we need to do is understand the neurotransmissions and all the materialist world. So materialism is on one side of the war, consciousness wars. And the other side is a more spiritual approach to consciousness. But you don't even have to use the word spiritual per se to be on the other side of the pure materialist side of this war. One could do many talks and a whole course on what is consciousness, right? And how do we understand consciousness? How do we frame it? From what biases and perspectives? And I'm very interested in that. And I have a few videos on the history of transformation. You can see on my series on this channel. And with that is the transformation of consciousness. That's my thing. That's, as an educator designer, what I'm interested in. And yes, I'm in these wars because I am a designer and competing against these other people creating these designs that they're creating and trying to pitch and sell, in which they're very successful in getting money, and I'm not. That said, let's go to the other three wars particularly. The one that I named not too long ago, maybe 20 years ago, was fear wars. And I was trying to claim that if you really look at what's going on in the interiority of this battle for the human consciousness, the battle for consciousness itself, the battle for existence and immortality itself through the use of machines to extend and dominate more of the planet, more of the cosmos, that is driven by fear. It's fear based for the most part, a good 99% of it, if not more. Fear of death, some people argue, like an Ernest Becker would, or terror management theorists would argue. Another video, and I've done videos on terror management theory, TNT. You can look all that up if you wish, do your own research. But it's the idea that this fear of death, of our mortality, is really hard for humans. We're a very sensitive creature. We don't like to die. We don't like to lose the things and to know too far ahead. Oh my gosh, that really is my end game, isn't it here? My time has, a written script that says, okay, by this date, you're out of date. You will be deleted. Don't like that psychologically. So a lot of existentialist arguments are made around this fear of death leads to an immortality project. Immortality being the seeking of ever existence. And that means I'll dominate whoever I need to dominate to exist and survive. Fearism, survivalism are two of the same sides of the same coin, is my argument. Fearism is another topic I've done many videos on this channel. Fear wars was really that's what another big, that's causing and is at the core of all wars in a way. Consciousness wars is also at the core. Now let's go back earlier in the century, certainly in the 40, 50 years ago, there was something called culture wars that was being named by big critical social theorists, critics, cultural critics. Culture wars was and is still going on and is enormously powerful. It is the kind of war against what you might call the more liberals and the conservatives, right? Or the races of this color and this color, the indigenous and the colonizers and settlers and so on. There's cultures on the planet going extinct because other cultures are dominating them and eliminating them one way or another, not directly necessarily by going in and bombing them or shooting. You can eliminate other cultures by changing economies around them that are so powerful that they get sucked up into and extinguished into economies and ways of living and worldviews and cultural behaviors and habits and rituals that they have practiced for millennium, and they're being sucked up, right, and absorbed. So it's kind of an appropriation or integration process of a culture war. And then, of course, then there's the political culture wars that are so popular and that get a lot of press and have a lot of heat to them. Those be everything from the vacciners to the non-vacciners, the eco people versus the, techno-urban people. There's the gender wars as part of culture wars and sexuality wars and identity wars, identity politics is all in culture wars. Now go back even further and another 40, 50 years, maybe not that long, but we're back 70, 80 years ago, and paradigm wars was beginning more and more. Paradigm is the idea from Thomas Kuhn's work that science and other forms of knowledge making and cultures move along these implicit rules and regulations, discourses, or sometimes just political and even sometimes arbitrary designs of these are the rules of how to operate in this group, this way of practicing knowledge making, and methodologies that go with that. And these are the ways that we assess those truths and or then make claims about truth and try to change the world with those knowledge truths, so-called, and market them. Yes, indeed. Everybody from theologies to churches and religions to science are trying to market something. And they want to market these paradigms, ways of being, ways of existing, ways of proving the truths of things. And so that's called a paradigm. And there are paradigm shifts that take place where, oh, we used to use Newtonian science and now we're using, relativity science and quantum science. These are like huge paradigm shifts, you see, in the way we understood what science is and how science can know and how valuable it might be. So paradigm wars was going on, particularly when I first went into higher education, when I became aware that the quantitative people arguing much more from a materialist point of philosophy and metaphysics versus the qualitative people with a more subjective interest in knowledge making. And that was a huge war, and it turns out that it's still going on too about what is the best way to know. And so now we've got the problem of what is a fact? How do you get to know what fact is, facts are? And then people can make up facts and tell lies and manipulate those in what's now called a post truth era that we're entering, which is really screwing us up psychologically because who do you rely on? Who can you trust? So fear wars, consciousness wars, paradigm wars, and culture wars are really ripping the fabric of trust and cooperation that is required with trust. And you can basically take some time on that and think about what now Alex Gomerez-Marin says in this talk. I'm only giving you the briefest little piece. But he's basically saying we are in an emergency, folks. And he's not trying to fearmonger at all. He's saying this is not just interesting what's happening in transhumanism movements, the selling of the cyborg, the selling of the machine, and basically humans that are making machines more powerful than humans so that somehow this machine world will be their fantasy world. And gosh only knows they'll turn themselves into a machine in doing that. So we're eliminating humans and humanity and centers of value and ethics is what Gomerez-Marin says. And they're basically saying is that trying to make machines conscious, to have consciousness, and use our consciousness for machine food. Yeah, build machines out of human consciousness food because we're the ones that have been living as organic living beings for 4 billion years on the planet. Machines have not. They're the new babies. But they're going, oh, we can tap into you folks. 4 billion years. Intelligence recorded, a lot of it in your genetic code, more or less, but more than beyond just genetics. And all that documenting you've been doing of history, oh, wow, we can just tap that and go, it's our food. And guess what? We're going to be smarter than you. And we're going to do things more powerfully and effectively than you could ever imagine, only because we can do it way faster than you can. That's what Dr. Gomerez-Marin speaks about. The great danger is not so much the inventiveness and creativity or possibilities of new ways of doing things that are impressive that machines can do. These new machines, right, that have so much interiority and they're capturing our interiority to fake it and make it look like it's human in a machine. That's how you make it human. You tap into our consciousness and you put it into a machine form through digital coding and all the complexities of computers, which I'm not an expert in. Algorithms, as they say. But the argument is that's when quantitative and machines feed off of speed. That's the other thing Dr. Gomerez-Marin is saying. Remember, machines feed off of speed as their top priority, also called efficiency. So again, now the economic techno-engineering people who are all into efficiency, quotes, they are on hyper steroids in this whole game to who's going to get there the fastest, the next, what machine can do it faster than the machine before. and that will market and that will sell and will sell it to everybody and everything and every business, and then you'll be competitive. You see how what speed does? The quantitative, materialistic move then into machine and speed efficiencies, processing of information with outcomes and efficiency. Yeah, they're not saying they're not less efficient. Some are more efficient for sure than the ways we've done it and the way humans can do it. But when that becomes the gold standard, you're going to lose humanity. You're going to lose the laws of nature. And that's what's happening. And that's what he says is evil. He's not coming from some big religious perspective, and he's not pitching a religion. He's actually a scientist. Maybe he's got a religious background. I don't know enough about him, but regardless what I listened to, I went, yeah, I've called that evil too. I've seen other people call that evil too, who I respect and who are really potent and thoughtful thinkers. And it's because it's working to reverse live. Evil is live spelt backwards. That's a useful way to think about what's going on. And that's what I pay attention to. I go, oh no, you are trying to erase and eliminate in a retrogressive regression livingness, and you're putting it into machineness and then calling machineness livingness. Sounds like a duck, walks like a duck, it must be a duck. This is what Dr. Gomerez-Marin uses as an analogy of how we can fall into a stupor, quote, and stupidity, quote, toward thinking the machinic realm of this speeded up efficiency is making meat, it's making humans, it's making lovers, it's making business partners who can get you a lot of profits on the marketplace and play for you because they're your companion. Don't you see it every time I go on Google or open up YouTube or anything? There's some damn kind of symbol or Zoom. It says, do you want AI companion with you? Click here and it will be with you the entire process of what you're doing. Of course, I do not click it. Not because it's going to kill me, but because it's going to feed consciousness wars. It's going to feed the machinic world that is there to basically tap and take and steal and will not pay you for it, by the way, as it rips us off as humans, creators, and as just humans, sensitive peoples. It rips us off for its simulacrum, as Jean Baudrillard, the great French philosopher, said a long time ago, in the early 1900s and so on. Yeah, it's been predicted. Sci-fi people have been predicting it. Movies have predicted the apocalyptic time of humans as slaves, more or less. So that goes back to the Matrix film, which I studied in my dissertation. That's where I came into realizing social activism, consciousness, revolution, transformation, education in the best has to understand what Dr. Gomerez-Marin is saying. The emergency we're in this wars, the consciousness wars. And that's really what I wanted to do this video on. The kind of an era of craziness. How can we understand it? Yes, we can understand a lot of it. And that's why I do my YouTubes. And there are many other people. I support a lot of other thinkers. I trust and hope some of them will support my thinking, and then we'll just keep spreading that around the planet. And this is one way to do education. And so do send this video out. I'd like it if you wish. And let's keep this conversation going. So look forward to your comments below. Have a good day.